Good early afternoon. We are live. You've joined us on the first Blue Plate special of the new year. So Happy New Year. Marcy Crosser Taylor, you are the first person we're welcoming there, 37 degrees in Richland, Washington. Not cold enough to snow. 37 degrees is cold enough to freeze, though. It's like, how cold is it here? I mean, it's like in the 40s now. I don't know. It's very cold. It's just like Alaska cold here. So, I mean, it doesn't seem like it to our winter visitors who come from Wisconsin and Michigan and Canada and, but to us, this is cold. I mean, this is cold. Martin Simmons, Gomer says, hey. Thank you, buddy, for joining us and for all the people. It's time to change something on the new year, because if you don't change something, you don't have a new year. You just have another year. It's just the same thing again. So change something. I don't know what you're going to change. Dina Kilpatrick, how are you doing? You shared. Thank you for doing that. Is that Iowa? You got the Iowa hat? No? Iowa, Indiana, Illinois. What? Idaho. The other I state. Okay, all right. You didn't drive, did you? Oh, you flew. Okay, all right, good. I mean, my son was in Idaho, Austin. That one was in Idaho for like 5 months guiding hunters up in Idaho. And I'm trying to remember where exactly he was. It was a cold place, wherever it was. Because I remember one morning he sent me a picture of the thermometer in his truck, and it was minus 19. And they were going out anyway. So it's somewhere right across the pass from Jackson Hole, Wyoming, wherever that is. So, because they would go into Jackson Hole on their day off. Laura Cleveland from Renfrew, Ontario. I bet it's really cold there. I checked last night. I keep places on my AccuWeather on my phone that, like Austin, lives in Memphis, and we have a place we hunt that's in Carlton, Alabama, and so I keep that on the thing. Then Nashville, we got a bunch of buddies in Nashville, and I've got a buddy in Portage, Wisconsin, and a buddy in Duluth, Minnesota. And those two are especially always bragging about how cold it is. And so I thought, what can I find that is colder than Duluth and Portage, Wisconsin? And so what I have on my phone is Dead Horse, Alaska. And last night, Dead Horse, Alaska, while it was in the teens in Duluth, Dead Horse, Alaska was minus 23 with a real feel of minus 45. Whew. Marcy Taylor, your husband is going to retire in June? And you say that'll be a big change. Is it going to be a big change in the weather? Or a big change because you guys are going to leave? Shanda Danner, hey, you made it. Laura Cleveland says it's minus 20 here today. Where are you? Minus 20? Oh, you're from Ontario. That's right. I forgot. I'm sorry. Minus 20. But you're still not as cold as Dead Horse, Alaska. Edwina English, Happy New Year from San Antonio. I rode an airplane with a lady, this is a couple of years ago, and she and her husband had lived their entire lives in the Upper Peninsula, Michigan. And so she said that they live down here now, but that her husband had always said that when he retired, they were moving south. And she would say, well, where south? And he goes, I don't know, but south. And she said he said that for 30 years and would never come up with a place. And then when he retired and they were loading up to head south, he still didn't know where they were going to go. And so she said that they had their motorhome and pulling a big trailer, and the last thing he did was got his buddies to help him tie the snowblower onto the top of that trailer. And she said, what are you doing with that? And he said, well, he said, the first exit we get off for gas and somebody says, hey, what is that? I'll know we're far enough south. Shannon said they visited Duluth in June last year and you wore a coat. I was in Minot. Is that North Dakota? That was North Dakota, yeah. I was in Minot, North Dakota in June one time and it snowed. Christy, my sister, hello. Thank you for the soup yesterday. Caroline Nettles. We got a good show for you today here on the first day of the new year. It's I think, very uplifting. It's an uplifting thing. It's people who invented stuff that killed them. I mean, how'd you like to invent something, be the inventor of something, and then have it kill you? Okay, but I think about 15 of these things. And so I just had the idea, I wonder if anybody has invented something and then lived to regret it. And the live part is what comes into question, because I don't know that they lived to regret it. They lived to be proud of it, but then they died, didn't have time to regret it, I guess. That's how he put it. Henry Winstanley was an inventor and an engineer in the 17th century in England he built a museum of mechanical wonders and operated a water theater that had fireworks. I don't know what a water theater is, and I couldn't find anything about it. But with the money he made from these attractions, he bought 5 ships. 2 of these ships were promptly wrecked on the Eddystone Rocks near Plymouth, England. So rather than wait for the government to do something about this threat to shipping, in 1696, Winstanley designed this massive lighthouse to mark the dangerous rocks and got approval for his design. And during the next few years, he built a granite and wood structure that was anchored by iron stanchions to this massive bare rock several miles off the coast. It stood 115 feet tall from the base to the weather vane. It had 60 candles burning in the glass lantern that was to guide the nearby ships. And everything went fine until the night of November 26, 1703, several days long storms, one of the biggest in British history at the time, was pummeling the English Channel. And these gale force winds and waves kept going for days. But when they subsided, the lighthouse with Winstanley in it was gone. Not a trace. Neither was ever seen again. So he invented this fabulous lighthouse only to die in it. Number 2, Thomas Midgley Jr. Now, some of Thomas Midgley's discoveries found widespread use in the 20th century. He was an American chemist, and he figured out the compound for lead to be added to gasoline. Okay, so I guess you could also say he was probably responsible for the catalytic converter eventually, because he invented lead to prevent the knocking in the engines. And he determined that a certain chlorofluorocarbon made an excellent refrigerant. Okay, so both these applications ended up having, terrible effect on the environment. But back then, he received numerous medals for his work as a chemical company executive and a researcher. But it wasn't lead poisoning from the gasoline that killed him. He was 51 and contracted polio and lost the uses of both legs, And so he invented this complicated pulley system so that he could lift himself up into a sitting position in bed. And on November 2nd, 1944, he got caught in the system's ropes and strangled himself to death. Happy New Year. That's encouraging, isn't it? Oh, my God. I mean, it's like bad to worse. All right. Karel Sosek, who is a Czech Daredevil. And this one gets me. He shot to fame in 1984 when he became the first stuntman in 23 years to survive going over Niagara Falls in a barrel. And so the key to his survival, this is 1984, okay? The key to his survival was his custom-designed plastic and metal cylinder that he counterweighted at one end so it would remain upright as it plunged over the falls and hit rocks and blah, blah, blah. But after Sosek climbed into the barrel and his assistants pushed him into the water, he sped downstream at 35 miles an hour, and just 3.2 seconds later, he was at the bottom of the falls. He was bruised, but he was okay. But then a few months later, things went horribly wrong. He built a new barrel. And now I just can't imagine somebody saying they're going to do this, okay? But he arranged, and I don't really remember this happening, but this was in 1985, and he arranged for network television to be there while he was pulled to the top of the Astrodome in Houston and had a vat of water on the floor. Okay, so he's going to get in this thing and be dropped from the roof into a vat of water, which just doesn't sound like a good idea to me. I mean, it sounds like a worse idea than going over Niagara Falls. Okay, but as he was released from the ceiling, the barrel began to spin off kilter, and it dropped, but not in the vat, close to the vat. But as the old saying goes about horseshoes and hand grenades, close don't count. And as you no doubt have already guessed, he was killed on network television. But, that was back when they were filming Evel Knievel doing crazy crap. And, it's like, hey, he's going to jump over the Grand Canyon. Let's film it, There's something in us about the... And it's like a NASCAR effect or a bull riding effect. You just can't take your eyes off of it. I mean, you don't want somebody to get hurt, but if they do get hurt, you don't want to miss it. So, all right, number 4, Harry Smolinski. He also tried to invent a vehicle of sorts. He was an aeronautical engineer and had a successful career designing jet aircraft and rockets. And in the early 70s, he became obsessed with building a flying car. But instead of creating the whole thing from scratch, Smolinski wanted to design lightweight wings and a tail that could be bolted onto customers' existing cars for flight and then removed for regular driving. Now, this sounds like an engineer that has lost his mind, All right. Now, wait till I tell you. See if you can find the flaw in his idea. His prototype was constructed out of a Cessna twin-engine plane and a Ford Pinto. What's wrong with this? Okay. The team acknowledged that there were problems with the idea, but they said, we feel we have the answers. Okay, so Smolinski and a co-pilot took his Ford Cessna combo out for a spin in California's Ventura County Airport on September 11th, 1973. And moments after takeoff, the airport manager saw a column of black smoke rising from the site of the crash. Bad welding, some loose parts, blamed for the fatal accident. And I think that was before Pintos started blowing up on their own. I mean, he just like picked a bad luck car, you know? Good grief. All right, number 5, Valyrian Ivanovich Abovsky, a Soviet chauffeur. This guy attempted to create a high-speed rail car so that Soviet officials that he worked for could travel around this massive country faster. So the Soviet Union was encouraging these engineers to experiment with putting, again, this just seems like a stupid idea, but they were getting the engineers to experiment putting aircraft propellers on trains to speed up land travel. So this guy was 25 years old, and he designed this streamlined oval-shaped car with an aircraft engine, a propeller on the back to increase the thrust, and he called it the Aero Wagon. And it actually could reach a speed of 87 miles an hour. And this was in 1921. Okay, so on July 24th, 1921, this guy and about 24 passengers boarded the Aero Wagon and traveled safely from Moscow to a city about 120 miles away. But on the trip back, the car jumped the track going 70 miles an hour, and it killed them all. Now, here's one you may have heard of. Horus Hunley. Okay, so it's not just land-based vehicles that can be stupidly deadly. Now, during the Civil War, the Union Navy blockaded southern ports, and the Confederate government offered a $50,000 prize. This is $50,000 during the Civil War. Of course, it was Confederate money, but $50,000 prize to anybody who could sink one of the Union ships. This Confederate engineers, man, they're getting everybody in trouble. These engineers. Okay, so this engineer named Horus Hunley accepted the challenge. And in Mobile, Alabama, Hunley worked on 2 early submarines that failed, but his third attempt, that he called the Hunley, it proved its worth because he sunk this old vessel in a demonstration. But in a later test, 5 guys died when the sub filled with water and sank. But Hunley was not deterred. It wasn't him that died, okay, so he's not deterred. He brought the sub to Charleston, South Carolina, and mustered this new crew. How do you do that? How do you muster a new crew? I'm guessing there was no internet then. I'm guessing nobody searched. Let me see how safe this thing is. Let me see if he's had any problems with it. That's why he went to Charleston, because he wasn't going to get anybody in Mobile to get in it. So he continued the trials. During a standard exercise on October 15th, 1863, the Hunley went down again with all hands, and this time Horus's hands were in there. Killed them all. But that wasn't the end of the submarine story. Soon after, the submarine was raised from the harbor and brought into operation in the Confederate fleet. I mean, who's getting in this thing again? But somebody did. So the Hunley actually became the first submarine to sink a Union warship. But in doing so, it sank again, and the whole crew died. Now, have you ever read a book by Clive Cussler? Okay, Clive Cussler, a very famous author. And Clive Cussler paid the money. He's a rich author. There are some of those. But he paid the money for a crew and stayed on the ship. And for weeks, they searched outside of Charleston and found the Hunley and raised it. And that thing is outside the museum in Charleston. You're just driving down the street, you see the Hunley sitting out in front of the museum right now. But and Polly and I were up there, and she said, "You want to go see it?" I said, "I don't want to get near it." I mean, it seems like everybody has anything to do with that is drowned. So anyway. Marcy Taylor says Ford Pintos were gutless wonders. Those first two submarines that Horus Hunley, the prototypes that didn't work, those were both made from Ford Pintos. Not really. Shanda Danner said she had a Comet in high school. It was ugly, but it got you where you needed to go. All right, Niners watching from Oklahoma, Elaine Powell from Arkansas. Here we go with Thomas Andrews. If Hunley's sub sounds cursed, think about this. It just can't compare with the mythology of this next invention. Thomas Andrews was the managing director at a shipyard in Ireland and one of the naval architects of its most luxurious creation, the RMS Titanic. And he was the engineer who headed up the process, and he went on the maiden voyage of the ship to supervise its performance because, of course, it was unsinkable. The first 3 days of the voyage were obviously uneventful, but after the ship hit the iceberg on the night of April 14th, 1912, Andrews observed the damage with the captain and determined the vessel had 2 hours left at most. Of course, verifying the account of the conversation between him and the captain is impossible because both of them died. But in the end, he went down with the Titanic. Body never recovered. But that's what you get for inventing an unsinkable ship, I suppose. All right, I love this one. 208 BC. Li Si, a Chinese minister who invented a method of execution called the 5 pains method. Now, when I saw this, I was obviously very curious as to what the 5 pains might be and what might be the fate of somebody who invents something called the 5 pains method. Okay, the 5 pains method was tattooing, cutting off the nose, amputation of both feet, castration, and bamboo flogging until dead. Li Si somehow fell out of favor with somebody who was more powerful than him, who sentenced him to death by way of, you guessed it, the 5 pains method. And so, he invented it and experienced it. Number 9, Utto Linthal is a 19th century aviation pioneer who was inspired to study wing aerodynamics after observing bird movements. Now, he invented a number of gliders, and one of those was, you've seen the pictures of somebody the big old wings and doing this, and that was him. Okay, so he invented a glider at his workshop near Berlin that he called the normal glider. It had a 23-foot wingspan, and the person operating the glider held on to supports underneath in a sitting position. So to publicize his inventions, Linthal commissioned photographs showing the gliders in action, but the photos hid one problem. You couldn't steer the thing. You know, you could glide, but you couldn't steer it. So during a test flight on August 9th, 1896, Lilienthal's glider suddenly went headfirst toward the ground. Lilienthal was unable to steer it away from the ground, and he crash landed at a height of about 50 feet, breaking his neck. His research into the mechanics of flight went on to influence the Wright brothers, though, who did not die in plane crashes. Number 10, William Bulock. He made some technological advances to the printing press. So this seems like something out of a movie, but he was a newspaper editor in the 1800s, and he sought to cut down on the labor that was required to print the news. So he developed this rotary press that could be continually fed with paper, and it eliminated the need for constant manual feeding and it increased the output to like 11,000 sheets of paper an hour. Think about this, in the late 1800s. So on April 2nd, 1867, he was making adjustments with his foot to the press while it was running. His leg became tangled in a moving belt, pulled him in, and printed his obituary. I made that last part up, but it kind of did, you know. You just hope that's fast. I mean, if it was, I mean, you know, it's like you hope it's not just like drawing you in a little bit and a little bit, and you know, you hope it's not drawing you in slow enough to read it as you're going in. You know, I mean, you hope it's just kind of a kind of thing. But anyway, Lord. Number 11, Franz Reichelt. In 1912, Franz was a tailor, and this is just stupid. All right, this is one of those things that you go, you're just asking for it. Okay, all right. So he fell to his death from the first deck of the Eiffel Tower during the initial test of a coat parachute that he invented. Now get this. Here's the stupider part of it. He promised the authorities he would use a dummy to jump out, but instead he confidently strapped himself into the garment at the last moment and made his leap in front of a camera crew. Watch this. Bonjour. Okay, number 12. Alexander Bogdanov was a Bolshevik revolutionary and a pioneer hematologist who founded the first Institute of Blood Transfusion in 1926. He was the first blood transfusion guy. And he died from an acute transfusion reaction. He died of a transfusion. But get this. And you know, this seems stupid to me, but I guess, I mean, how many inventions do you think there were that were just kind of, they seemed really stupid, but then they worked? I don't know, but this seems pretty stupid. He had this patient who was 21 years old, and this patient, 21-year-old patient, had tuberculosis. So Bogdanov's hypothesis was that the younger man's blood would rejuvenate his own aging body, and that his own blood, which he believed was resistant to tuberculosis, would heal the student's disease. Neither happened. So the kid just died of tuberculosis, and so did the transfusion guy. It's like, good grief. Henry Tuli was the inventor of the high-speed steam locomotive. And during a test run in France between Chartres and Orléans, he leaned out of the locomotive. He had made the first high-speed locomotive. So he leaned out of the locomotive to see what was appearing around a curve. He's already laughing. All right, so he's invented the high-speed locomotive. He's enjoying this high, fast thing. And so he leaned out of the locomotive to see what was appearing around the curve. It turned out to be a telegraph pole. And he was instantly killed. And his last words were, a pole. Now, I'm not really sure. I just think that maybe that's what he said. That's just, you know, if I was writing the newspaper article, that's what his last words were recorded, a pole. Number 14, we got two more. Jean-François Pilatre de Rozier was a French chemist with a long name, and he made the first human-powered untethered balloon flight in 1783. So the balloon, now I didn't know they did this, but the balloon was fueled by fire that heated the air inside the balloon. Now I knew that part, but I guess I never thought beyond the, you know, the where they pull that thing, and it's, I guess I never thought beyond that. But the downside to this design was the large amount of combustible stuff that had to be taken aboard. And they would take hay. That's what they would burn. In a balloon, 500 feet in the air, burning a hay bale in the basket. This seems really smart. But the hay wouldn't provide enough power to do Rozier's next goal, which was flying across the English Channel. So he built on this hot air design and added a second balloon filled with hydrogen, which is a gas that's lighter than air. And he believed the extra buoyancy could take him across the channel. Despite his background in chemistry, Rozier apparently forgot that hydrogen is explosive. I mean, it's extremely flammable to the point of being explosive. And as he soared across the French countryside on June 15, 1785, the hydrogen balloon caught fire in midair, plummeting to the ground, making Rozier the world's first fatality in a flight accident. Here's the last one. I really like this one. Juan who? Who? Juan. Juan. Who? Juan who? Juan who? Juan who was a 16th century Chinese official who attempted to launch himself into outer space in a chair to which 47 rockets were attached. The rockets exploded, and neither he or the chair were ever seen again. Some people are just so freaking stupid. I mean, it's just. I mean, we could have taken 2/3 of these and done a show on death by stupidity. You know, I mean, because come on, a Ford Pinto, come on. You know, you're going to strap rockets to your wicker chair. And I mean, we're assuming the dude has seen rockets, right? I mean, he's in China. His dynasty created them. We're assuming he's seen one of these things go off, and he's going to attach 47 of them to his butt. And you think this is going to be a good thing? Death by stupidity. I'm going to do a show on stupidity one day. I've threatened this for a while. I've threatened to do a Blue Plate special on stupidity. Because I am just, I mean, you just watch the news at night. And I was sitting with Polly last night, and Sandy Atkins says, Happy New Year from El Salvador. And you're still here, Sandy, and just don't do anything stupid this year, okay? Just let's make an anti-stupidity pact in the new year. But I was reading I was watching the news with Polly last night, and she there was somebody did something, and she said, "Well, that was stupid." I said, do you know? Think about this. You know how stupid the average person is. You know how stupid the average person is. Okay, I want you to consider something. 50% of them are stupider than that. Whew. Wow. Happy New Year. Stupid world we live in. There's got to be a show we can do on stupidity. And we'll do it soon. But we're glad you were here with us today. Appreciate people in the studio audience all being here. And we'll see you Thursday for the Wisdom Harbor version. And if you have not joined Wisdom Harbor, it's $27 a year for the whole thing, and you get the Thursday blue plates. And so make sure that your family is on board. All right. Happy New Year. Bye-bye.